In the previous video, we talked about what freedom looked like. Now we're going to talk about who were the states that were part of the North, that were part of the Confederacy, and a part of the border states. Because if you remember, the border states and the northern states were exempt with the Proclamation number 95. Y'all call it the Emancipation Proclamation. But it really didn't free anybody. Not really. A war tactic. Conditional. Union Army had to be there to support and to ensure that if you made the step toward freedom, that you were free. Got my air quotes. Welcome to Culture and Dining with our DIA. Welcome to my world. Now let's get into this continuation of this conversation about the history of freedom for enslaved Africans. As I said before in the previous video, the Emancipation Proclamation, Proclamation number 95, was an executive order and a presidential proclamation, which was issued originally in September of 1862, giving the Confederate States 100 days to get their mind together and come on back into the Union. So let's look at who was in which group of states. Included Maine, New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Kansas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, California, Nevada, and Oregon. These states were under Abraham Lincoln versus the Confederacy, which included Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, North and South Carolina, Virginia, and Jefferson Davis was their president. Maryland, Delaware, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Missouri were considered the border states. The Emancipation Proclamation, officially Proclamation 95, was a presidential proclamation and executive order issued by Abraham Lincoln on January the 1st, 1863. It changed the legal status of more than 3.5 million enslaved Africans in the seceding Confederate States, that the enslaved are now free. On September 22nd, Lincoln issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, and its third paragraph reads that on this first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall then be therefore and forever free, and the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any effort that they may make to their actual freedom. General Orders number 3. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance to the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. and the connection heretofore existing before them becomes that of employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere by the order of Major General Granger. So you see, for real, we really were not granted freedom in a true sense of freedom, because even General Order Number 3 told them to stay where they were and to work for hire. I wonder how well that went over. Well, at any rate, we chose in 1866 to commemorate Granger's reading of that order in Galveston, and we have celebrated it ever since. Now, people have said that traditionally we had red foods, which included red soda water. No. Now, granted, there may have been strawberries and watermelon included because those were seasonal foods. There were probably seasonal foods had. And depending on where you were in Texas, as you began to celebrate it more and more across the state, those were foods that were available in the summer that came out of your garden. If you lived along the coast, there was probably some seafood involved. If you lived near a rural area, there was some wildlife involved. And maybe, just maybe, if you had some meat that you had stored from the previous year when you butchered a cow or a pig, if you had such, that's what it was. As the years progressed, yes, red soda water did come into play, but that was after 1937 when Big Red came out in Waco. Yeah. So it has become a part of the tradition. It is not the original tradition. And for me, while I know traditions are flexible and evolve, when it comes to somebody telling me that certain things were tradition, especially for something that goes back to Juneteenth, no. Red soda water don't come into play. Some lemonade with some strawberries, some watermelon. I'm sure there was some okra on the table, and some tomatoes, and some cucumbers, and some black-eyed peas, and maybe there was some akara, some black-eyed pea fritters on the table. Definitely there was some fried chicken, because that was accessible. We have to think about what these people had available to them immediately upon receiving their freedom. It wasn't necessarily, what it looks like today, because some of the things that we're eating today are not available. Michael Twitty from High on the Hog, who's written a book called The Cooking Gene, one of the things that he and another historian suggest in regard to the red food is to represent the blood of our ancestors. and as a practitioner of African spirituality. That makes sense to me, that we make a sacrifice, and our ancestors sacrificed. So acknowledging and having something read to acknowledge their sacrifice is something that we would have done, because quiet as is kept, a lot of our traditions we still do. We don't always understand that we do them, but we do them. So I get that part. I know that we would have made the best of whatever it was that we had. I know that coming out of a situation that was totally unbearable, with no control over you, your personhood, the inability to protect your family, and now to be free, to be able to do that, was something to celebrate. Now granted, with Reconstruction and the fact that Plessy versus Ferguson said we didn't have any rights, we knew in all certain terms from Reconstruction up to today that we're really not free. We really have no right to die or to be respected. Okay, what about how y'all act in your community? Understanding the system, understanding conditioning, understanding PTSD, because I understand the history. I understand that African people have never been a monolithic people. And I understand the Juneteenth for us is a way of having a central day to commemorate, one, the sacrifice of our ancestors, two, the fact there was freedom given, and to reflect on those sacrifices, to reflect on our history, to reflect on who we are, and the greatest that is the hidden gem called us. So I thank you for listening to my take on American history, Texas history, freedom. What does it mean? What does it really look like for an African people here in America? And encourage you to go research the history of the United States and the relationship between its citizens called Africans. I will leave you a couple of books to read. One was written by W.B. Du Bois, one written by Joshua Giddings, and Lydia. I can't think of her name, but it'll be down in the description, okay?